Ever get that feeling like you're being watched? I mean, seriously, with cameras seemingly everywhere these days, kind of feels like we're living in some kind of movie, right?
Yeah, it's definitely a sign of the times.
Totally. So we're diving deep into this whole world of surveillance cameras, specifically. We've got a whole stack of interesting stuff to dig through today. Government guidelines from Queensland, some opinion pieces that'll really get you thinking, and even a blog post weighing in on the pros and cons of it all,
It's a topic that tends to get people fired up, and for good reason.
for sure. But before we go all big brother on this thing, let's start with something a little more down to earth. Do cameras actually make us safer?
Well, this Queensland government document brings up an interesting point. It says that when cameras are visible, they can really cut down on certain types of crime, especially when it comes to, like, your home or property. They actually give examples from the Gold Coast, where they saw fewer break-in attempts in areas where they'd placed cameras out in the open.
So it's like having a round-the-clock security guard, even when no one's physically there.
Exactly, that constant presence can be a pretty strong deterrent. The document also stresses, though, that where you put those cameras really matters if you want them to work, so it's not as simple as just sticking them anywhere.
Makes sense, yeah. So strategic placement is key.
Absolutely. And that leads to a bigger question that several of our sources wrestle with. Does having more cameras actually reduce crime overall, or does it just push it into areas where there are fewer cameras watching?
Like squeezing a balloon to describe it. Crime's got to go somewhere. Do any of the sources have any insights on that?
There aren't any easy answers, unfortunately. Some studies suggest cameras can lead to a decrease in certain types of crime, but others say the evidence just isn't clear-cut.
So it's not as straightforward as saying cameras equal less crime.
Right, and that highlights a need for more research on how effective camera surveillance really is when it comes to stopping crime before it happens.
Okay, so maybe not a magic solution, but even if they don't stop crime altogether, they can still be really useful afterwards, right? Like providing evidence for investigations.
Absolutely. The Boston Marathon bombing investigation is a great example of that. They used surveillance footage from nearby businesses and people's personal devices to help identify the suspects.
Right. In those situations, cameras become invaluable tools for law enforcement. They can be used to help figure out timelines, find witnesses, and even provide crucial evidence that can be used in court. It's kind of wild, though, when you really think about it. We tend to focus on the whole crime-fighting aspect,
Yeah.
but cameras are being used for so much more these days.
Oh, absolutely. Surveillance has expanded way beyond those traditional security uses. I mean, we're seeing it everywhere, from managing traffic to keeping tabs on the environment.
It's like Big Brother's gone green.
Well, in a way, yeah. A lot of our sources talk about how cities are using cameras to make traffic flow better. Less congestion, smoother public transport, that sort of thing.
So instead of just catching you running a red light, they're using the data to actually improve things for everyone.
Exactly. By analyzing all that data from traffic cameras, city planners can figure out where the bottlenecks are, tweak the traffic lights based on what's happening in real time, even give drivers alternate routes during rush hour.
That's actually pretty impressive. It's like having this bird's eye view of the whole city and using that to keep everything moving.
Precisely. And it goes beyond traffic, too. Some cities are even attaching cameras to drones to monitor air quality. That data can then be used to pinpoint areas with really bad pollution and hopefully do something about it.
Sounds like that could be a game changer for the environment.
It really could, especially when you start combining real-time data with things like predictive modeling. And it's not just governments getting in on the action. Businesses are using surveillance more and more these days, too.
Yeah, no kidding. You see cameras everywhere in stores and restaurants now. But it's not just about security anymore, is it?
You're right. Security is still a factor, of course, but businesses are also using cameras to track customer movements, figure out foot traffic patterns, even monitor employee productivity.
I can see how that data would be valuable for a business,
Yeah.
but it also feels a little creepy. Like, do they really need to track my every move while I'm grocery shopping?
It's a fair point. Businesses will often say that the data is anonymized and it's all about improving customer service or store layout, but it definitely raises questions about privacy and how secure that data really is.
Yeah, for sure. It seems like there's this fine line between using tech to be more efficient and just relying on surveillance for everything.
And that debate's happening in workplaces, too. Some businesses will use cameras for basic security or to make sure everyone's following safety rules, but others are going all in on these super advanced systems that monitor employee behavior and productivity.
So like a digital manager looking over your shoulder all day. No thanks. I wouldn't be able to handle that.
Yeah, it can definitely feel intrusive. And while some people argue that it's about improving efficiency and holding employees accountable, others worry about things like increased stress, micromanagement, and just a general lack of trust in the workplace. It's a tough one.
It is, though it's interesting. One of our sources mentioned that Aussie consumers really care about sustainability, and some businesses are actually using surveillance to tap into that.
Oh, really? How so?
Yeah. Well, they're using cameras to monitor things like energy consumption, waste production, recycling, that sort of thing. And then they use that data to show customers how committed they are to being environmentally friendly.
Ah, so it's like, hey, look how green we are. We've got the data to prove it. Clever.
Right. But would knowing a business uses cameras for sustainability make you more likely to shop there? Would it make you feel any better about that trade-off between privacy and, saving the planet?
Yeah.
That's something we all have to think about as this tech becomes more and more prevalent. It feels like we keep coming back to this tension, right? The good that surveillance can do, but also the very real concerns about our privacy.
It's the heart of the issue, isn't it? And it's something all our sources are trying to get their heads around too, no matter how they feel about the tech itself.
Right, because even if we say, okay, cameras can help prevent crime or make traffic better, there's still that feeling of being watched all the time. Like every move is being tracked and analyzed. Kind of creepy when you think about it.
Yeah, that loss of anonymity, it rubs people the wrong way. And as this technology gets more advanced, that feeling's only going to get stronger.
Especially with things like facial recognition coming into play. That's a whole other level.
Absolutely. Facial recognition has the potential to, really change things when it comes to privacy, more than almost anything else out there. Think about it, cameras everywhere, in public, identifying you, knowing where you go, what you do, all without you knowing or agreeing to it.
Now that's getting a little too Black Mirror for me, like straight out of science fiction.
Yeah.
And some of the sources we looked at, they point out this stuff isn't some far off thing. It's happening already, and not always in the best way.
Yeah, one example that springs to mind is schools using facial recognition. Some people say it's about preventing crime, keeping kids safe, but others, they worry about misidentification, bias in the algorithms, even just the fact that these kids are losing their privacy at school.
It's like that school district in Florida,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're using it to try to stop school shootings. And man, it's a tough one. Of course, you want kids to be safe, but at what cost? It's a tough line.
Definitely. It's complex. There are no easy answers. But it shows just how important it is to talk about this stuff, have real public debate, clear ethical guidelines, especially as it becomes more common.
And it's bigger than just schools, right? I mean, we saw facial recognition being used by the police, employers, even advertisers.
Exactly. And as more people start using it, the chances of it being misused, well, they skyrocket.
It feels like we're at this crossroads.
Yeah.
We have to decide what we want the role of surveillance to be. Do we really want cameras everywhere, tracking everything we do? Or do we prioritize privacy, even if it means we might have to give up a bit of security or efficiency?
Big questions and no easy answers. But they're questions we all need to be asking. The choices we make today, they'll shape what happens to privacy, to freedom, even democracy itself.
So where do we go from here? Well, a lot of the sources we looked at, they seem to agree that knowledge is power. The more we know about this stuff, how it works, the better we can deal with the tricky questions it throws at us.
100%. We have to be honest with each other about this tech. Talk about the good, the bad, the risks. What needs to be done to keep people safe?
And we can't be afraid to demand transparency. Hold the people making these technologies accountable. Governments, corporations. They shouldn't get to decide this stuff in the dark.
Exactly. The future of surveillance, it's not up to them to decide. It's up to all of us.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And on that note, we'll wrap things up, but we'll leave you with this. As you're going about your day, take a look around. Really notice the cameras around you. What are they looking at? What's that data being used for? And how does that sit with you? Because the more aware we are, the more we can actually do something about it. We can build a future where technology helps us, not the other way around. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everybody. We'll see you next time.